Hello, welcome back. This is your lead instructor, Gennaro here, CEO of Koi Tech Solutions, and we're about to talk about risk management in cybersecurity, brought to you by ACSMI. Let's get started, shall we? So the introduction here. Think about risk management as a way to provide organizations with the framework and the methodology around how to identify, how to evaluate potential threats. Because think about it. Where else are we going to have these different threats? If it's not personal, it's going to be on the business side. Now, it's all about safeguarding what we like to call digital assets. It's about safeguarding sensitive data. Within a corporation, they're going to have customers, and the customers are going to have data that are stored within the organization, whether it be on the premises or within the cloud. But either way, the ideal is to protect a business from ransomware attacks, understanding and applying these risk management practices, and we'll dive into them on how to actually go about doing that. So what is a risk regarding cybersecurity? It's going to refer to the probability and the impact. You would normally see this in the matrix, right? We have probability on one side, impact on the bottom, or vice versa, however you want to kind of build that out. But either way, think about it as like, well, what's the probability of this actual threat even being exploited? Or vulnerability being exploited, I should say. Now, it's always going to lead to something. It's going to lead to either a disruption within service availability, unauthorized access to an organizational system, confidentiality, or the tampering of data. Even when it comes to like a data breach, that's what that's entailing. Now, key elements of cyber risk, though, you're going to have your threat, your vulnerability, and your impact. All is going to go into the aspect of understanding what risk is. A company uses outdated servers, right? Now they may be vulnerable, this is just an example, to ransomware attacks. But if exploited, it's going to absolutely halt the operation. Because why? Well, you're not going to be able to access that data anymore. That data is going to be absolutely, taken over. Now, some advanced techniques for identifying this risk. Think about it like this. We're thinking outside the box here. We're looking at how can we scan the network with tools such as Nessus, ACAS, right? Or something like OpenVAS. But we're trying to identify specific vulnerabilities that are associated with that system and the software that's existing on that system. And then you're going to go into the threat intel integration, where you're going to provide some real-time threat data to actively defend against these threats. It's all about having that vulnerability being protected. And then you want to simulate these tests too. You want to simulate some red teaming and blue teaming exercises that's going to allow us to uncover the different flaws in the network. Yes, you can do a vulnerability scan. It's going to tell you what's vulnerable, but then you want to take it a step further and actually try to test this stuff out. And then you want to look at behavioral analytics. Now, this is going to detect unusual behavior, because think about it. A lot of the different, let's say, viruses or malware, they're going to be trying to do things that a normal user or admin wouldn't be wanting to do. Right, like change permissions, turn on and off a bit, or something like the registry, or using regedit to modify a key in the registry. Why would you be doing that unless you had a specific reason? So yeah, you want to look into that. Now, the differences between qualitative and quantitative methods. So think about it like this. If you're looking at it from a qualitative standpoint, you're looking at the aspect of a high, medium, or low, versus a quantitative assessment. Now you're looking at the metrics of actual numbers. It's always going to be around the aspect of, mitigating some form of risk. One of the best ways to do that is to understand that, you do absolutely have the choice in which one is going to, benefit you best. But then the next step, though, is really identifying, which assessment, which one am I going to be actually utilizing? Which one will benefit? Because you got to think about the other aspect of, you can combine this. You can combine the likelihood and the impact with also having some form of like a matrix, like I talked about earlier, right? How much of an impact is it going to be? Is it going to be a high likelihood of a probability and then a small or low impact? We got to think about that. And that's going to determine, how we go about mitigating the actual risk in the first place when we put together these mitigation plans. Now, the mitigation strategy, though, to minimize the identified risk. You're going to put into place what we talked about before, some zero trust architecture, never trusting, but verifying, and then regular patch management. So using like WSUS within your Microsoft toolkit to automate patches for your systems. You can automate it. Yeah, absolutely. I would suggest you do that. Using multi-factor authentication too is going to add that extra layer of security. Because think about it. You can have that username and password be compromised. But if you have multi-factor authentication on there, then you're going to have that second layer of security. the attacker or the one that's impersonating you trying to get into your account, they're going to have another layer to get through. They're going to have like an actual PIN number. And if they do not have that device, they're not getting into that system. All right, so think about it like this. There's always going to be strategies that we can utilize. But on the more low-end side, zero tech and the architecture around that with the aspect of backup and recovery, you're going to have a low implementation complexity here. You don't have a lot to actually implement versus something on the high side. Now, the role of a framework in risk management, and we touched on this a bit, but think about NIST RMF is a 6-step process. Of course, you have to plan it out though. You have to plan out what you're going to be doing and then step into that process of actually categorizing the system, looking at the controls, implementing these controls, assessing, doing it all over again. Because one of the aspects of risk management is a continuous process. It's ever going. You're not just going to put it into place, put this IDS or IPS into place or SIEM into place and be done. No, that's not how it works. But an example here. Think about cloud computing risk management. So you want to secure the cloud services against emerging threats. Well, the policy that's going to be utilized is going to be multi-factor authentication and encryption. An example of this is a SaaS company. They're going to use AWS Native, which is a security tool like Shield for DDoS protection. It's going to protect what? The availability. Absolutely. So these are just other ways that you can look at implementing the aspects of, well, real world application. Because think about it. When we understand the concept, we are best suited to understand how we can actually implement it and safeguard our organizations or our personal data against these different threats. We always want to look above and beyond on how we go about doing this. Risk management in cybersecurity is all about managing your risk, understanding what the high probability of an impact on an organization. Because again, think about the categorization piece. If you're looking at NIST RMF, you can have a categorization on that system. You're going to have controls based upon the severity level of that system. Are you going to do all the controls within the medium baseline or low baseline or high baseline? It's going to be based upon what the category of the system, as in if there's a high categorized system, that would probably mean that there's going to be a high impact if that data on that system was compromised. But again, it's been great. Gennaro here, CEO of Cortex Solutions, and we just talked about risk management and cybersecurity, brought to you by ACSMI. Hope you have a great time, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.